Hey Angels and Biscuits, CSDL here, and today's video is going to be a little bit overdue February and March wrap-up. So I will start with talking about the mangas that I have read between the 2 months. The first one being Katakoi Lamp, which is a yaoi or boys love manga that I picked up at Barnes & Noble. It's pretty cute. I mean, there is a little bit of some adult themes in there, so I would be aware of that, but otherwise it's very cute. You kind of find yourself just going like this through half of it because they both clearly kind of like each other, but they're pretending like they don't, and it's very they're being very dumb, and it's adorable and it's endearing and pretty cute. It's pretty cute. And also, if you're into like those coffee shop stories, this does take place centered around a coffee shop. One of the characters works there, or his father owns it, and the other character becomes a regular customer, and that is how they meet, and it's pretty cute. So if you like the whole coffee shop trope, this one. The other 2 mangas that I read are volumes, I think 4 and 5? Yeah, volumes 4 and 5 of A Man and His Cat. Now, in previous videos, if you've watched my other wrap-ups, I have raved a lot about this series. It is so wholesome and so adorable, and I will continue to recommend A Man and His Cat if you haven't checked it out already. If you want to kind of dabble into manga, say you haven't really gotten into manga before, this might be a good place to start too, because it's about cats and it's very wholesome, and it's pretty relatable. Like if you're a cat owner, you know, you'll see a lot of things in this series that you go, yeah, I feel that. That's a mood. But it's so good. It's so good, and it's so wholesome, and we get a little bit more drama, I guess, in, I don't remember which one, but Fukumaru like gets out. Fukumaru is our main cat here. He gets out concerned about another cat, and then he gets lost, and you have his owner here super worried about him and out searching for him. So there's like a little bit more emotional stakes, emotional drama between the 2, but we get to meet some other cats, and it's great, and I love this story. I can't wait for more. It sucks that you have to wait so long between volumes because, you know, this is still an ongoing series. But if you love manga and you have not yet checked out A Man and His Cat, I highly recommend you do. If you maybe want to start dabbling into manga and you've never read any before, I would even give this one a shot. It's pretty good. It's very wholesome. It's very sweet. If you like cats, just do it. It's so good. So yeah, I read 4 and 5 of A Man and His Cat by Umi Sakurai. I am really bad at giving author names. Okay, so let's see. Katakoi Lamp. Who wrote you? Kyohei Azumi wrote this. Because I feel like I should mention who wrote the things, and I'm very bad at doing that. And Umi Sakurai is a genius. Like, this is a beautiful manga. It's amazing. It's probably one of my favorite mangas that exist right now. Out of the ones that I've read, this is probably in the top 3. So it's so good. It's so good. We're back to it's so good. Okay. So novels. We can move on to novels. The first 2 I'll talk about briefly here are Blood of Elves and Time of Contempt by Andrzej Sapkowski, the official start of the Witcher series. Well, Blood of Elves is book 1 of the actual Witcher series, and then we have book 2. So we are no longer following just Geralt like we did in the short stories that I read, I think in January or December. I don't know, it was a previous wrap-up that I talked about the other 2 or 3 short stories that I've read. So these 2 follow Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer. Not all together, obviously, they are separated. So, it's not just following one perspective, it's following 3. It's a little more talk heavy, there's not as much action as when we followed Geralt, but we do get a lot more, I guess, world building. Sapkowski isn't, I don't think his world building is his forte. I think his characters are, which usually fantasy authors usually do one or the other, characters or world building, unless you're Brandon Sanderson, and then you're just amazing at everything, I suppose. But Sapkowski's world building does seem a little bit, he plays fast and loose with a lot of the lore to me, but his characters are amazing. Like, even Yennefer, who, like, my introduction to Witcher was the TV show, and I can't stand Yennefer as a character. Like, how they're writing her does not agree with me at all. But in the books, Yennefer actually isn't too bad. I like her. Her personality intrigues me. Like, I like how she's written, and Ciri is kind of fascinating because she's such a young child. In the books, a lot younger than the show makes her. So we kind of see Ciri growing up. We see her learning. It's really fun. It's great. And obviously Geralt and Jaskier are amazing. They are like my 2 favorite characters. But yeah, so this is a little bit more of a linear progression for a story. They're not jumping around different, with time skips like they did in the short stories. And at least that's how I'm remembering it. I don't think they did time skips. It seemed pretty linear. But yeah, so there's a lot more plot building in these. It's all coming together. The stories are slowly connecting. We're getting that big plot build with Ciri and her powers in the what is it that Ciri's building towards? I think she's hearing the voice in the Time of Contempt, but like, oh, the not the Dread Doctors, that's Teen Wolf. The other thing from Teen Wolf. The you know what? I'm probably just gonna have to Google this and put it in there. But whatever the big antagonist is that's coming, we also get to understand the rest of the world. We see, the politics playing out. We see politics being played out with the mages and the other, kings. We see schemes going on between the rulers and the kings. So there's a lot going on in the main series. So it's actually pretty interesting. I like where the plots are going. There's still a pretty quick read. Like, I think I said in my last wrap up with the short story compilations that I went in kind of feeling like this would be kind of Game of Thronesy because it's medieval fantasy, and it's supposed to be a little bit more political and things like that. But they read really quick. They read to me somewhere between a young adult and adult fantasy novel. Like, they go by really quick. You're not sitting there having to read super carefully in case you might miss something. Like, it flows very well. It goes by pretty quick. So, still super enjoying the Witcher books, even after getting into the main series. Maybe starting with the short stories helped, because we got that action with Geralt before we got into a little bit of a slower pace with the politics and the kings and the mages all plotting things, and then there's Geralt and Yennefer plotting things. So, still super into it though. It's good. It's got a good pace. I would definitely recommend the Witcher books if you've, gotten into the show or the games. But I do recommend you start with the short story compilations before you hop into the main series. Now, the last book that I read was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I've heard a lot of great things about this book. I didn't know a ton about it going in, so I really didn't know what to expect. And at first I was a little hesitant, like, okay, where is this book gonna go? Because we have this journalist who gets basically an exclusive interview or time with Evelyn, who was this famous actress since, oh, how long has she been an actress? The 50s, I think, is when Evelyn rose to fame, and she's kind of been an icon ever since. And it's like, well, why did they pick this particular journalist? You know, she's not that well known. She has a couple pieces published that are very well done, but like, you know, she's not a big name in the field. So obviously Evelyn had a reason for that, and I wasn't sure what reason that was going to be or where they were going with it. I was just kind of, so yeah, I wasn't too thrilled with that particular story element because I didn't know where it was going. They weren't very clear about it. The journalist herself didn't interest me a whole lot. It felt like they were trying to make her very likable or sympathetic kind of character, and I'm like, makes me kind of not want to do those things with her. But the more we read her and Evelyn together, like as they were doing the interview, you know, she grew on me. She wasn't quite the character that I thought she was. And then at the end, the twist, like why Evelyn called her to do the interview, why she insisted it had to be this journalist. Now they got me with that. That was a twist. I did not see that coming. I was impressed. It ends very well. Like the book, like the ending. Wow. I won't spoil it, but it was very good. I did not see it coming. It was very well done. And all the in between, the seven husbands of Evelyn Hugo, right? Right. So before we get too much more into talking about this book, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I forgot to mention the author once again when I introduced the book. So, like I said, a lot of this book is Evelyn telling her life's story, or her who the love of her life actually was, but that is part of her kind of life story to this young journalist or reporter, magazine reporter, Monique Grant, and that is the essential plot. She's willing to tell her story, willing to share who was the real love of Evelyn Hugo's life. So while that is kind of the overarching plot, what we are reading about is Evelyn, you know, dictating her life to Monique. So, you know, we're like back in the 1950s when Evelyn first left home to go to LA. You know, we see her life. That's what a lot of the book, what we're reading is, and those are amazingly written stories. You know, you feel like you are there with Evelyn. The characters are very well done, all of them, not just Evelyn and Monique, but so I don't want to spoil too much about this book, so I don't really talk about any of the characters in all that much depth except for Evelyn or Monique, or even name a ton of names, because again, I don't want to spoil anything because I think everybody should just go read this book. But there are a lot of other characters who play important roles. I mean, there's obviously Evelyn's husbands, there are other actresses. There is Harry, who I think was her agent. He's also one of the husbands and also a really dear friend to Evelyn. But yeah, so there are a lot of characters in this book, and I think all of them are done pretty well. So real quick, I'd like to talk about Evelyn Hugo as a main character or protagonist, because I find a lot of times when I'm reading books, any genre, any author, it doesn't matter, but they often miss the mark when writing female characters. It's like their female main characters or protagonists just often lack depth or personality or character development, or they don't have proper flaws. And I'm really big on characters need to have flaws, you know, so often I don't connect with or find female main characters all that interesting, but Evelyn definitely hits the mark for everything that I look for in a main character. You know, we see her from this young child to an older woman, and we see her character development, we see the depth of her character, her personality. She is flawed. She's not a perfect character. She definitely has flaws. She knows she has flaws. But she also knows her strengths, right? So there's a complexity there. She's got depth. She's a just overall well written character. And if I had to, like, say, pick a top 5 well written female main characters or protagonists, I would probably put Evelyn Hugo in that top 5 because I think she is a very well written character. I loved Evelyn as a character. It's very well done. Just very, very well done, Taylor Jenkins Reid. Very well done. Love Evelyn a lot. I love Evelyn a lot. Okay, I know, broken record here, but she's so good. We're back to the good. She's so good. Okay, so good. Hey, so Editing Biscuit here. I just thought I would give a little bit more of a specific answer onto Evelyn and her character, because I don't really describe her or what she's like a whole lot, but what I really loved about her, now bear with me, this might sound odd, but I loved how manipulative she is. Like, she knows how to take advantage of a situation to make it hers. You know, she's got a whole bunch of confidence when it comes to that. But, you know, she's not immune to mistakes and pain. We see her hurt. We see her have consequences to her taking control of situations. Like, it doesn't always play out in her favor. But, you know, a lot of this story is her controlling the situation on her terms, even when others like Monique thinks she got the upper hand. We find later that Evelyn was still in control. You know, I love characters like that, like charming jerks, sort of. But with Evelyn, you know, there is depth and reason behind her actions and personality. Like, it's not just because she wants to be a jerk. Like, she kind of had to be. Like, there's so much depth to her character. She's good, okay? She's good. And by good, you know, I mean she is written very well, written very good, because as a character, Evelyn definitely falls on the morally gray spectrum of things. So, yeah. But anyway, back to the main video. Taylor Jenkins Reid does a pretty good job with setting a scene and telling a story and giving us good characters. At least in this book, I was very impressed. Even, you know, the characters that are the bad guy are characters that are clearly jerks, you know, but they're written in a good way. Like, they're written well. Because sometimes you can have a character that's obviously bad and they're written bad because, you know, who cares, they're the bad guy. But her writing, even for those characters, was done well. I was just overall impressed, especially by the end of it. Like, at first I was a little bit hesitant going in, but like, you get a few chapters in, and it really starts to come together. Things pick up. You get kind of sucked into the story. You get sucked into Evelyn's story. It's just very good. I know I say that a lot, don't I? But it's true. It's very good. Read it. And I also was just, like I said, really impressed with how Taylor Jenkins Reid, like, writes a scene and sets up the scene. You know, it's, you feel like you're there with Evelyn, and I was impressed. Not to mention the ending totally got me. I was not expecting it to go that way. Like, the reveal or the twist at the end, it was, wow. Not to mention the ending, I'm still super not over that. It was so well done. It was a good twist. I didn't see it coming. It was good. So this is it kind of reminds me of historical fiction because, you know, you start in the 1950s and go up till about, I mean, you go up till now, but like 1950s to the 1980s, I think, is when Evelyn Hugo was in her prime for acting. It's not super historical, but, you know, it's historical enough that it takes place in a time that most of the readers, you know, hadn't lived through. And, you know, usually those books just aren't my cup of tea, that aren't, you know, in the modern setting, outside of fantasy. Like, I like medieval fantasy, but when it's a more real world type of book, I do prefer more of a modern setting. But I did really enjoy this. I think it's the way Taylor Jenkins Reid writes. Her writing style I really enjoyed, and I think that really helped me get into the setting, you know, of the 1950s and the 60s, 70s, 80s. So props to her for that. But if that is something that appeals to you, you know, like a little bit more of a historical fiction, it's for you. But also, you know, if you like romance, you know, there is, I don't know if it would be a tragic love story or bittersweet or what, but there is romance going on in this book. Obviously, it is who was the love of Evelyn Hugo's life? That is the question that Monique is going to have answered, you know, by the end of her time with Evelyn. So romance is a big element to this book, and that was also done very well. You know, it was pretty organic, like nothing felt forced. I love a good organic love story where, you know, you can see the build up, you see how we got to that point, you know, nothing just is thrown in there where it's like, what, how, where, no, I don't see this. No, you see it, and you're rooting for them, even though, you know, there's a lot of obstacles going on. But the love story is good within this book as well. So we have good writing, good characters, good love story. I definitely would recommend The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo if you have not checked it out yet. So that is all I had for you guys today. Let me know what you guys read in February or March in the comments down below, or what you're currently reading. I'd love to hear about it. Or if you've read any of the books that were in my wrap-up and you want to tell me what you thought of them, I would love to hear that as well. Yeah, so like I said, that is all I had, and I will see you guys next time.